I'm just waiting to make sure that we're going to get some people in here. uh, Yesterday, when I did that last live stream from my vehicle, uh, it didn't look like any connection was being made, um, and that's why I ended it early. I kind of jumped around a little bit, but I want to make sure we've actually got some people coming in here before I start, because this one's going to be, well, probably a little more detailed than a lot of the others I've done about my own personal situation. So, well, it's been a minute. Looks like we're not getting anybody in here as far as I can tell. So I'll just go ahead and get started. Oh, there we go. Now I know we're up and running. Good morning, everyone that's coming in. Thank you for being here. This one, I figured after yesterday I should go ahead and give a little history of things. Today is the 5th of April, 2019. I said 16 the other day. I'm Roy Potter. Welcome to this impromptu of the Potter Expositor. Uh, let's see if I can get this just right so that you guys can. Okay, let's see if that works. Alrighty. Let me cover a few initial things first that I think are important. Uh, just like in the situations that I've talked about in the past, this investigation, this Russian investigation on Trump, we found out this morning, well, actually it was yesterday, Senators Lindsey Graham and Chuck Grassley have informed Barr that they have evidence of misrepresentation of the Clinton emails and the email investigation by the FBI and the Department of Justice, principally the Mueller team, hiding exculpatory evidence and basically misrepresenting what was going on. This is nothing new. I've been talking about this for a long time, that's what they do. And it's principally, it violates regulations, but it's also criminal. And I don't remember the statutes and things. They've given prosecutors immunity. They went too far with this immunity thing where they can do anything they want and not be held accountable, and that's wrong. I can understand protecting prosecutors in investigations and what they're doing to get the criminals, but what they've done, especially in the federal government, is protect the prosecutors even in their misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, and even when they commit criminal actions. That's got to change, and it's got to change quick. But the same sort of thing was what resulted in the Bundys in Nevada having their case dismissed with prejudice, and then of course that got the DOJ upset that they got found out about all these things that they had done that were misconduct, illegal, both by the DOJ and the FBI and the BLM and others, and hid the evidence, didn't bring it up, actually kept people from defending themselves. And the judge finally, with all that happening, had to dismiss it, even though she was definitely wanting the case to go forward. And of course the DOJ, in their shameful conduct, even under Barr now, have appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to overturn the dismissal by the judge. Shameful. But I bring that up because I want to show you that the DOJ and the FBI and these federal agencies ignoring exculpatory evidence, in fact hiding it, is nothing new just in the Trump thing. It's happened for a long time. Okay, the next thing I want to bring up is that there were the infiltration by the FBI into the Trump team. I don't think a lot of people understand. I was talking to my Republican insider last night, and he said, I don't think people really understand how serious this is. The FBI put spies into the Trump campaign, not just to, and campaigns do that anyway. The Democrats will spy on the Republicans and find out, things about them and vice versa. This isn't that. This is putting people inside, or attempting to put people inside the Trump team that then would purposely make contact with foreign governments, principally the Russians, of course, so that then the FBI could do their little circular reasoning, their really framing is what it is. So they place these people in there, have them on purpose contact the Russians, and then the FBI could say the Trump team was trying to make contact with the Russians in an inappropriate manner. That's how bad this got. That's not criminal investigation. That's framing. That's political espionage. That's really espionage. Okay? So I wanted to make that clear that that was the real purpose behind what the FBI was doing, was to try to frame the Trump administration, not just find out, what are they like the DNC would, oh, what are Trump's platforms, where is he really going with this, what's his plans. No, this was to try to frame everyone in the Trump campaign, including all of us. Michael Flynn, of course, was on the target list because he exposed in a public interview on television about Obama and real federal government creating ISIS and supplying them, training them, arming them, etc. That's what really got Michael Flynn in trouble. And I hope people aren't forgetting that. No, I'm not making stuff up now, Fred Darby. I'm not the only one talking about this. This is in the news, okay? This is in the news. This is what's happening now. I'm not telling you anything that you can't find out if you've got the brains to go look for yourself. Yeah, there's collusion with Israel too, of course. Finally, I noticed. I don't usually, well, during the live chat yesterday, I saw that BP Earthwatch. I think it was him, Jesse, who brought up Article 3 or Article 2, Section 3. I talk about Article 2, Section 2 all the time, about what Trump can do, and Jesse pointed out Article 2, Section 3, and I think what he's talking about there is that the president can force Congress to adjourn if they're out of control. He can do that, and also the fact that he can commission officers into the government. Now, some of that commissioning in particular, the Senate has to okay, but there are other things that can be done there, and many of us who are vets have talked about putting these people into directorships, commissioning them there. Okay. No, I'm not making anything. I mean, go to H.A. Goodman today. I looked at his post this morning, and he's covering a lot of this stuff is in the major news if you just dig a little deeper. Okay. I don't make stuff up, Darby. Sorry, don't. Darby. Oh, that's interesting. Are you related to the CNN Darby? Is that who you are? That's CNN, or is that? That's one of those. Okay. So the real purpose of this thing that I want to do, yeah, Rand Paul spoke about spies in place in the Trump campaign yesterday. Yes, thank you, Alan Fishbeck. Like I said, people who are paying attention don't want to just cause problems like this guy that was saying that I'm making stuff up. It's out there. Okay. All right. I want to give a little history because of what happened yesterday. That's not the first time it's happened. It probably won't be the last. And if they're willing to do this to somebody like me, think about what they're doing to President Trump. Think what they've done to Michael Flynn. Think what they've done to all. And it could happen to you, especially if you speak up. So I wanted to give a little history about what's happened to me over the last decade. Well, it hasn't been quite that long. I could go back a few more years and talk about some that occurred. It really started when I did one of my initial posts on YouTube. It happened before this, especially when I talked about the terrorism problems. But it became real overt in and I actually I could actually go back to the 80s. My phones were being tapped in the 80s with the help of law enforcement, but it was primarily the LDS Church that was doing it at that time. Their security apparatus, which is tied in. They have people that work for them with or from the FBI, the Secret Service. People that have retired from those agencies or have moved over into the church security. And my name was on the security, and it probably still is, in their main office. And I've told that story before. And a guy by the name of John Heinerman was the one that told me about that. And church security had actually grabbed him off the street one day. He had revealed some of the financial actions of the LDS Church, and they took offense to that. And when they took him in for to question him, which was really a kidnapping, he saw my name on this board, and so anyway, but that was back in the '80s. Um, yeah, I know it's not the government, Fred Darby. Why don't you just go away or hold your horses and pay attention, okay? I'm talking about when it started. The LDS Church has ties to the federal government that apparently you don't know anything about. But as a matter of fact, when I was at Tooele Army Depot as the provost marshal, we used the LDS Church to gain information on suspects that we couldn't get. And so we called the LDS Church up and they gave it to us. Don't you think they do that today? So they may not be legitimately government, of course, but they certainly will be in there helping them out. Okay, so let's jump forward to 2009. I think it was 2009. It may have been, let me see if I'm right there. No, it was 2011. I started my YouTube channel in 2009. I was kind of talking about, science, politics, military stuff, philosophy, things like that. Yes, it is breakfast time. Thank you. I sure is. But in the fall of, or the winter of 2011, that's when I put up my resolution of a former idealist post. And basically, what I did was there is when I got back from overseas in 2002, I wrote down some things in my journal. And what I read in that video that time, resolution of a former idealist, was what I put into my diary, into my journal, talking about my disgust with what the American government had done. Not the American principles, but the people that were in control of our government, what they had done. Of course, looking back at 9/11, looking at the wars in the Middle East, the lies, the cover-ups, etc. So I put that up there, and I got a lot of feedback that I could tell were not coming from regular folks. It was obviously from intel folks that didn't like what I was saying, from the dark side, the rogue side. But I just expected that would happen, so I ignored it. Well, then I started talking about General Petraeus and some of the things, because I had worked for Petraeus, and some of the things that I knew about him. Well, that caused a little bit of a firestorm, and I got some more surveillance and some more action on my YouTube channel. Still minor, just kind of harassment type stuff, trying to shut me up gently at that point. The real change came in 2013. In 2013, the Boston bombing occurred, and I saw it exactly for what it was. And I talked about this yesterday. Kraft being there, the mercenary group, which is what it is, and it got people so upset in the intelligence community. They're bringing me some more coffee. Thank you so much. It got people so upset in the intelligence community and the NGO, non-government organizations, for instance. Blackwater had been broken up by that time, and Kraft, which, by the way, Chris Kyle, the sniper that the movie Sniper was about, and who was killed on a range in Texas. If I remember correctly, it was just prior to the Boston bombing that he was murdered, and my gut feeling is that he objected to what Kraft was being asked to do, and because of that, I think that's the reason why he was probably assassinated. I don't think he approved of what the plan was on this thing with the Boston bombing. But at any rate, I analyzed that and I pointed out what was happening there, and I got jumped on by on the YouTube channel immediately, and then I got attacked in other places on the web by CIA intelligence operatives working for different civilian and veterans organizations around the country. And they accused me of stolen valor, that I wasn't ever in the military and that kind of stuff. And then when they found out that they had made an error there, or that people wouldn't believe that, then they said, well, you never got past lieutenant. Being a lieutenant's not being a lieutenant colonel. Well, then they finally, other people started showing my the Senate confirmations of the promotions and things like that. And so this stuff started coming out by people, not from me, because I figured nobody would believe me anyway if I put my 214 out there, which I wouldn't do anyway. I don't care, people, it's nobody's business. But Other people verified it independently, kind of what Trump has allowed people to do to verify his information, what he has done independently. So they proved that I had gotten this confirmation of Lieutenant Colonel, these friends on my YouTube channel, and then it came down to things like, well, you were a bad officer, you didn't do this and you didn't do that, and not appreciating, like they say, your service, but denigrating it in any way that they can. You see what happened there? So it was an active process to try to shut me up and to try to discredit me. Now, again, I wasn't doing it for money. The only ads that you see on my channel here, when Pam Jones made my intros, um, uh, she she used information uh, that is copyrighted, but you can use, but the payments for use of it, go to the people that created the material, and then she also, I hope, gets paid for her creation of those things as well. I do not get paid from YouTube in any way, shape, or form. The only thing I've ever sold on here or tried to sell was my book, and only that because I felt that people wanted to understand my concept of Israel, Saudi Arabia, what happened in the first century with Christianity and all of those things, and the fact that the things that happened there. Um, but it's not a big deal. I don't push it, and of course now it's out of print anyway. So that's what happened there in 2013, and that kept up for quite a while. I didn't really notice any any real problems initially, but about a couple of weeks later, I did get surveilled physically in several locations. One was at a because I would go to different Starbucks to upload my videos. I'd go to different ones all the time, but every once in a while I get lazy and I'd go to the same one twice in a row. Almost inevitably, someone would show up. And I won't through all the details, but at a Starbucks in Spanish Fork, there was a man and woman team that were there. I made them, and then they left, and I followed them, and then they split up. They had two separate vehicles, but there was no doubt about that one. There was another one in another small town, Payson, in Utah, and in that situation, I was in a McDonald's uploading a video, and my car was parked out in the parking lot, and a lot of this is on YouTube. Some of this stuff you can see on YouTube when it happened live. Not all of it, but some of it. Some of it, I couldn't do it because like I'd have to leave my phone or my camera to get out of the way or whatever. But plus, I don't really want to show faces of operatives. I mean, they're being used by a nasty establishment, but I don't really want to put them in danger unless they push it, and then I'll go ahead and put their face up there. But anyway, so this other thing was my car was parked out in the McDonald's parking lot, and three SUVs came in. One blocked my vehicle because I was parked on the curb, and the other two parked in the parking lot and started moving. Well, I left the restaurant. I left my computer there. I gave it to a guy, and I said, "Would you hold this for me? I've got to run and do a little chore." And I ran out, and basically I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't take pictures. But they scoured the area for probably a half hour or so, and then got bored and left. Um, these are probably rogue guys. Okay, probably the NSA is right there in Lehi, Utah. So these are probably new NSA agents. Agents that they just gave the job to do because they didn't have anything else to do, because they definitely weren't professional in any way, shape, or form. Very green, put it that way. So that happened. So after they left, and I came back, got my car, slipped in my car because I did notice that there was another one in the street, and at a gas station across the road. And so when he went in to get some refreshment, and his buddy was out, taking a little break, I managed to sneak into my car and leave. I've done those kinds of things before. Another incident that happened was in Tucson, Arizona. Actually, it happened several times there. And Tucson, Arizona is a city that's basically pronounced that it's under martial law to the commander of month and Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. You can look that up, find that out for yourself. But at any rate, I was there in a Starbucks again, and a guy comes in and does this head motion for me to leave. And I'm looking at him, and then he shows me his badge and his gun. He's a U.S. Marshal. And he goes over and he gets in line. I'm going, what the heck? And he looks at me again, and he does the same motion. I go, okay. So I get my stuff and I leave. And just as I go out and get my car, it started raining like cats and dogs. Here come the SUVs. I'm not sure who that guy was. He almost looked like Craig Sawyer. I know Craig Sawyer lives in Tucson. I don't think it was him, but he kind of looked like him in some regards. And then I ran into them a couple of other times where they passed me on where I was. I'll just put it that way. Just trying to make sure that they were keeping track of me. And gang stalking is about making intimidation. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, they could do it electronically, but they decide to do this gang stalk because it's supposed to upset you. So that happened in Tucson a couple times. And then in Salt Lake City, several times at some Starbucks there. One time they came in and the guy was taking pictures of me with his cell phone. And I looked at him and I got up to walk over to him, and he ran out, got in his car. It was a government vehicle, and he took off. Another one was the male-female team I was starting to talk about yesterday. The female came in, sat down. Then when she realized I knew that I had made her, she left. And then the guy came, and I could tell it was the same thing. She apparently had gone across the street and was watching from across the street. But I exited from a back door, went around the corner, came behind this guy, was filming him on my camera, videotaping him, taking pictures. And obviously she saw me, told him, he turned around and looked at me. I got in my car, and as I left, he got up to leave and go get in his car, but I was long gone before either of them could get close to me. Another time, I was sitting in that same Starbucks, and a lady comes and sits down. That doesn't happen very often, you know. I mean, she sits right next to me, very pretty, blonde, blue-eyed, tall. And oh, by the way, the female in that double team, I put a picture of her up on the internet, and I got contacted by a guy who knew her when she was a U.S. Air Force security officer, and currently worked for the federal government. And I think he said the NSA at the time. So we positively identified her as that. Then this situation, this next one I'm going to talk about was also in that same Starbucks. This lady comes and sits down, and this was right after the Bundy deal, about maybe 6 months or a year later, something like that. And she comes in and she starts asking questions about the people at Bundy Ranch. And I looked at her. I said, "You're a Fed, aren't you?" Oh. And I said, "Look, even if you are a Fed, it doesn't matter. I think you're a nice lady. You're attractive. I've got nothing to hide. Why don't we go to dinner?" She couldn't get out of there fast enough. Okay, so, and I'm not covering all these. There have also been cars coming around my neighborhood. Obviously, I don't mean just where, my own place, but of course I travel and these other places as well. As a matter of fact, it was in one of those instances that some things were done to my car. So at any rate, that's just kind of a short history of some of the things that have happened, and I just wanted you to know about it. After the ranch thing, and again, they were trying to tie me into making the plans, trying to tie me into the plans at Bundy Ranch with the Bundys and the militia and all that. That I was in the planning process. They had tried to say that, or they were looking for evidence that I was impeding the feds there, which wasn't the case. I was there to demonstrate, to make my voice known, absolutely, to do the spiritual blessings that I did while I was there, the prayers and things like that. Most of it was just to watch and record. And I knew that things like that bring bad people around, not just the feds, but real criminals. And we showed that with the couple that ended up that got thrown out of the Bundy thing, and ended up going to Vegas and shooting a police officer there, maybe two of them. So that I was worried about, sure, security in that regard, anytime you have a big group. But at any rate, so knowing my background, obviously, with finding out, that I'd been, outspoken against these nasty things that the government does, they really dug into me. They went into my emails. They went in. Went into my phone records. I was being gang stalked then. Well, not gang stalked. They were surveilling. They didn't want me to know at that point that they were there. But I have so much experience in this, I can usually spot it. Not all the time, but I mean, it's not like I walk around in fear or anything like that. But I notice it when I do. So at any rate, they were trying to tie me into that, but I will repeat. And of course, there were no tie-ins. I wasn't in the planning process. I didn't know the Bundys before. The militia hated me because they thought I was an FBI, spy. They were looking at me because they thought I looked too much like law enforcement. Um, even oh, rats, I forget his name right now. Stuart Rhodes. Even Stuart Rhodes of Oath Keepers looked at me with a jaundiced eye, at that point. So, and again, I wasn't a member of any of those groups or anything. I was there to record and to talk about my disgust with what was going on there to these Americans who, obviously, the UN and the federal government, on behalf of Harry Reid and Hillary Clinton, were trying to suppress them and steal their resources, our resources. Well, at any rate, while I was at Bundy Ranch, this was another thing, and I talked about this before. There was a media personality that set up a meeting between me and two guys. They were obviously feds. I don't know if they were BLM or FBI, but they took me to lunch and they were trying to get me to organize the demonstration at the corrals. Well, how did they know we were going to end up at the corrals? Which, by the way, I didn't end up at the corrals, but at any rate, off of I-15. But how did they know that it was going to move there? This was like a day before the final standoff at the corrals there at I-15. And they're talking to me, trying to get me to organize the demonstration at the corrals. Well, now, wait a minute. At that point in time, we never knew about going to the corrals. That was never even discussed. Never in the demonstration area was it, and that was off on the Bunkerville Highway, at the stage there, off the road. That had never been discussed that I heard. And so then they were trying to get me to organize that demonstration at the corrals. Well, obviously, see what they're trying to do? They're trying to frame me. They're trying to set me up. But I told them, and I said, look, I'm not in charge of this thing. The Bundys are, and this particular media personality that was constantly in the middle of this stuff. I told them, I said, look, this guy who you know, obviously, he's trying to take charge. He's not in charge. The Bundys are. He just needs to be a reporter, just like that's what he's supposed to do. It's one thing to have an opinion, but it's another thing to be trying to run. And they were trying to say I was running, and I wasn't. So in other words, that was another time they kind of focused on me. And after that, they went after my emails and all that, which ended up, we found out in the discovery process during the Bundy trial, they had my emails from like back as far back as like 2009, where I talked to some girlfriends on my emails and all this stuff, and had the names of some of these ladies and stuff like that. They went pretty deep. They were trying to tie me in to that entire deal in a very inappropriate way. It was definitely a setup. But like I said, there's no evidence. There's kind of like what they did with Trump. They can make a lot of intimations, but as far as proof, evidence, like Mueller couldn't find evidence. Trump exonerated himself, as Dan Bongino said, because he was innocent. Same with me. But there's nothing wrong with speaking up. There's nothing wrong with the Second Amendment. And they were going way too far on those things. And again, that's why the judge threw it out. So that's what happened at Bundy Ranch, and they've continued to basically keep track of me since then. The situation during Jade Helm was another instance where there was a guy surveilling me in one of the neighborhoods where I stay, and obviously I saw it, and usually there are two of them, but there was only one in this one car. There could have been a second car, but I came out and I got in my car and I followed this guy, and he literally ran. He finally got down to a Smith's um, grocery store, where there's also a Home Depot there, and I think he thought I was probably going to do something to him. So no doubt he was on the radio yelling for help and all of that, and finally, I just kind of waved him off and left him. And as I was going back, there was a local police car parked on the road just down the street from where I was staying. And uh, so it was obvious that he had called for help at that point. I also have friends in law enforcement who have told me that the Fusion Center has my information, and several times I've had local police cars. Uh, as I'm driving, obviously they're following my phone, and they come in and sit across the street, follow me along the road, those types of things. So that's happened quite a bit as well. And then we have now this situation after I came out yesterday and said those things. They decided to do this other thing. And no, it wasn't the mall security guy. I saw somebody saying that. No, I know what mall security is. This is not mall security, okay? They don't go around in these kind of vehicles with weapons and computer systems. And like I said, he was wearing a black shirt with the Kraft skull logo on it. I know exactly what it is. The guy in the pickup truck that I caught a few minutes later, who had parked again next to just a couple of stalls away from my car where I parked it the second time, um, he was wearing, I don't know what his shirt was, but he was wearing a green coat, sort of like this little jacket. Um, and I didn't go look in his car. I just stared at him as I drove by. I purposely turned around and drove by him. Um, these are bad people. They project onto us what they themselves are doing. And I probably missed an incident or two that I could discuss, but I think you get the idea. This is serious business. And yes, they are trying to intimidate us. They will. They will. They will try to set you up. They will try to frame you. They'll lie. They'll do circular investigations, just like they have on Trump, where they plant information out there, then say that they got this tip, and then use that as probable cause, to conduct an investigation or to do other things. Uh, Unfortunately, and they're not doing this to people, like I said yesterday, they're not doing it to people like AOC, Tlaib, Omar, Schumer, Pelosi, Feinstein, etc., etc. They're only doing it to those who support the American constitutional republic. Okay, yeah, exactly, Liza Jean Williams. Too bad they can't use these resources on Hillary. Of course they should be, but that's what my point was yesterday in my long live stream at my office, at my studio. That's exactly what my point is. You can tell what the intents of our federal agencies are by what they don't do as much as by what they do, probably more so. Probably more so. And the fact that they're not doing those things shows you they're trying to support those people who are subverting our nation. Okay. Well, I've gone on for over a half an hour now. I'd love to take some questions here, but I'm out in a public place and I don't want to, starting to fill up now. I could talk pretty freely. They put me over in a corner here where I could talk without too many people hearing exactly what I'm saying, and not get anybody upset. But now we got to kind of like, what's this say? Your white woman cannot resist Ramesh beautiful Hindi man. What? So anyway, I just wanted to make all those reports this morning. Trump has to act. I get the distinctive feeling that he's backing off too many things, and I'm not the only one that's saying that. Tucker Carlson said it last night. My Republican insider got a little upset. He doesn't agree with what Tucker said, but overall, I don't see much happening still. Um, and of course, they're going to keep after Trump and cause him all this difficulty. Um, you know, Trump needs to release the classified information. He needs to do that. And he needs to stop this thing at the border. He needs to say no to the MSM and the CIA. He needs to pull the troops back home, put them on the border. He needs to stop this regime change nonsense. Um, he's fixated on the economy, and I warned about this early on in his presidency, even before I said, yes, the economy is important, but he cannot use that as the support for everything he's doing. He's got to go after it in the right way, and he's not. He's just not in my estimation. Going on 40 minutes. So no, I don't inappropriately praise Trump, and I don't inappropriately find fault. Okay, I call it as I see it. And some of you don't like the fact that I'm totally against Trump, and some of you don't like the fact that, or you're upset that I'm not 100% behind him. I'm not a yes man. Like I said about my OERs in the military, more than once, my OER said this officer can be depended upon to speak his mind. And depending upon who reads that, you can see where that could be a double sword. Depending upon who reads it, that can be taken by those people as a good thing or something that they don't want. Right? Showed up just by what happened because of those OER uh, comments. I could tell who wanted me to pretend to be a yes man but not really be. Okay, I've said enough today. I hope that history was interesting. We're in a lot of trouble. We're in an awful situation, and I don't know that we're going to get out of it. Too many people um, either aren't committed to doing something about it or are like the SJWs and the leftists and those things. We've got a lot of troubles. All right. I think I'll end it there. It's time to eat. Okay. I hope you all have a great day, and thanks for being here. And I probably missed something that I was going to talk about, but that's good enough for now. All right. Keep your eyes on the horizon. Here's the ground. Stay safe. Prep, pray, stay out of the way. All right. Next time. By the way, I learned that I have to let this sit for a minute or YouTube cuts it off too bad. Thanks, Louisa. Appreciate it. Liza Jean, thank you. I think I saw a couple of other. Okay. Yeah, I think I can cut it off. Thanks, everybody.